Greetings and salutations, Real Estate Undergrounders. It is Ed Matthews with the Real Estate Underground. Thank you so much for joining us today. As we have discussed in the very recent past, multifamily is certainly one asset and flipping houses is another, and certainly near and dear to my heart. But one of the other things that I'm always looking for is opportunities to learn about new asset classes. And as you've listened to the last several episodes, and thank you for that, by the way, if you've been hearing us talk about contractor yards and land and a whole bunch of other storage and a whole bunch of other opportunities out in the real estate space. And today I'm joined by actually a really unique offering. And it's something that I've looked into, and it's something that my partner, Mike Meyer, and I have dabbled in a little bit, and we're starting to get really into it. And that is Timberland and land. And with me today is John Brenard and Terry Myers from Southview Timberland Investments. And they are based down in Georgia and they are raising a fund and going and buying a whole bunch of land. And we're going to talk about that and a whole bunch of other stuff. So guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ed. So great to be with you. Looking forward to sharing about this topic and why we love the asset class and talking about our backgrounds. And you got Terry on the phone as well. And Terry, say hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us there.
Yeah. Truly my pleasure, guys. Yeah, for those folks that haven't discovered you yet, why don't we talk a little bit about your backgrounds and what Southview Timberland's all about?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. This is John Bernard. I'm the managing director and founder, one of the co-founders of Southview Timberland Investments. 15 plus years in finance and startups, worked for some of the biggest wealth management companies, JP Morgan, Smith Barney, Wells Fargo Advisors. I was, key member of a startup after the wealth management career. We built that company and sold it to a publicly traded company. So that was a great thing. So really, I built two successful businesses in my career. One was the wealth management business, scaled that from 0 to over 100 million in assets. And then the second one was a startup that we built and then sold to a publicly traded company. I'm a Timberland investor with background in the financial markets, really focused on expanding access to Timberland investing. You may wonder, hey, this guy was involved in wealth management and startups. How did he get involved in Timberland? It all started back in 2008, 2009, when my family bought a Timberland investment property and switched me onto it. But we can talk more about that origin story in a little bit. But Terry, you wanted to give a little bit on your background?
Yes, I'm just Terry Myers. I've lived in Georgia all of my life and basically grew up around the farm and being access to Timberlands and the different opportunities that it presented itself at different times. And I just started out Timberland and selling Timberland and acquiring my own different means of methods of keeping it. And over the past 35 years, I built a network of around 12,000 acres, my own property, of just having connections with mills and stuff and friendships and people that in the general area of Georgia here, which is the pine timber in the U.S. now. And I met up with John's folks. They bought a piece, and he and I got to talking. He said, hey, what you think about us pulling this thing to a bigger tier? I said, that seems like a good idea. So here we are.
Yeah, and another tier is, to say the least, right? And you guys have built one heck of a business. And so congratulations on that. The asset class. John, you mentioned, and Terry, you got sounds like a pretty deep and broad experience set with regard to these types of properties. But John, I know your family bought Timberland. What about it is so attractive? I'll throw that out to both you guys. What about the investment is so attractive and superior to some of the other asset classes that you can invest in?
So happy to talk about this. I really talk all day about it, but really the biggest thing, really the two biggest things I love about it is it's a real asset. It's something you can put your fingers and toes into, right? It's something that I really feel comfortable presenting this investment to any family, any friends, because their dollars are going into something that's a hard asset. The number two thing is the level of control you have with this investment. So all the other and strategies that are offered to a lot of investors, you're got the wins of the public markets, right? You can have a very diversified portfolio of stock. If it goes down 30%, right, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can hold on and wait for it to recover, right? But with us and Timberland, biological growth is always taking over with those trees. As you and I are sitting here talking, those trees are growing, right? And so our product is becoming more valuable every single day, regardless of what's going on in the stock market or with interest rates or inflation. And to me, I just love that control. And the way that we buy properties is typically with all equity, right? We typically buy the properties outright. We don't take on a lot of debt. And so we're really not beholden to anybody. So those are two big reasons. I could talk about other ones as well, but I'll let Terry tell you why he loves the asset class as well.
Number one, like John said, it's an asset that's tangible that you can lay your hands on, you can live on. You also can recreation on it for outdoor use. But there's so many different avenues you can go this day and time with pine timberland. And not only we focus in Georgia mainly because that's where mainly the most of the mills are, but covering the whole Southeast.
Yeah.
But what we like about Georgia so much right now is the growth pattern that's going on in the Savannah area with the ports and stuff, and it's just really creative. You have multiple deals with land. You may buy it as a timberland, and next thing you know, there's somebody interested for HBU. They see a different use for it or whatever, and along comes with that, we've implemented pine straw. That's a great venture we've taken on that's using for mulch around houses and just different to me, and the hunting leases and stuff. So it's hunting is gone crazy, or just simply just my lease a piece of property, not so much for hunting, but just taking a family out and enjoying, just having a campsite on. So we put all kind of multiples in this program now ourselves. That a lot of people aren't doing that. We look any way to extract value for our investors.
Yeah. So let's break that down, Terry, because that's an interesting point that you make. Actually, there's a couple of different points that I'd like to explore, but let's talk about the usage first. When we talk about timberland, what we're talking about here is you growing pine to then send to the mills to then sell to lumber yards and the Home Depots and Lowe's of the world. Yes?
Yes, that's very true. And for most timber funds, that's strictly all they do is to concentrate on the timber growth itself. So we've added these other avenues so we can create more cash flow with the property. So yes, the basic timberland investment is the tree itself.
Selling board feet, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
All right. So, yeah, and actually you hit upon exactly what I wanted to explore. We've had guests on that have talked about RV parks and mobile home parks and farmland and land where they are hunting lands as well as any number of other things. And you've touched upon a thing that I'm curious about, and that is, how do you track the folks that are on your property? 12,000 acres is a lot of land. And I know that's not even your corporate portfolio. That's just Terry's portfolio. Are you giving access to, say, hunters or hikers or campers? Are you setting up specific areas where you're allowing this and then somehow gatekeeping access to the land? Like, how does that work?
So pretty much each tract of land is in different areas or whatever. In my history for the past 35 years with different people, it just brings on, I've got more customers than I do have products. It's just, and so occasionally what happens is you'll sell off a piece, or in another folks, they'll have where to hunt or whatever. Then I'm back on the list when you do acquire. My list of hunters is longer than the list what I've got product for. And it just keeps climbing as far as that, because that just seems to be a big recreation is that. And then also, like I said, and some people might not hunt. They might just want to come and just have a place that they can lease and set a camper up on, just enjoy it outdoors. I mean, it's really took on a broad spectrum. People wanting to get out on these vast lands in rural Georgia or rural Alabama or wherever in the Southeast. So it's really been, and there's so many more avenues to go and have interest at different levels. You was mentioning something about RV parks. That's another thing our campers on, just various reasons where it didn't have water. We've set some camper spots up that they lease these year round. So it's just a lot of avenues there to create revenue from this.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating. And so you're setting these up as local businesses, or are folks finding you on an app like OnX, or like, how are they figuring out, hey, I would love, there's a huge property that I want to go hike. And how do they figure out?
Mainly it's just word of mouth from previous customers. They might have a guest that comes with them. There's no form of advertising could, but have the product like that, because right now I lease other properties from adjoining landowners and tie into that, but it's mainly word of mouth and just customer from past customer service.
Fascinating. Yeah, I get. Go ahead, John.
No, I just wanted to add to what Terry said. And we've really set up our fund to be a core plus timberland strategy. So really at the core of everything we do, the land that we buy has to be a good timberland investment. And in learning this business through Terry over the last time we checked how long we've known each other, it's going on 18 years. Really, number one is you got to pay attention to the soils. You got to pay attention to the mill infrastructure. So those are really the two key things that we look for. And Terry had some other things he can add too. But that has to be, the land that we buy has to be a good timberland investment. Then we typically have 2 or 3 of these other activities that we can offer to create additional income, like the recreational leases like we're talking about. Our fund also allows for farmland leases. So what often happens is we buy 1,000 acres, 700 acres is timberland, and maybe 300 acres is farmland. We'll lease that out to a professional farmer and get the cash rent from that farmland lease. We've done cell phone towers. We've done the pine straw harvesting, which we can talk more about how that works. Of course, timber harvesting, pre-development, highest and best use, opportunistic land sales. So it's really, we've done mineral rights. So really, we do all these different activities. The core is that it has to be a good timberland investment, right? That's the number one thing. And then we usually get these other 2 or 3 activities to create income from. So just wanted to just make that point as well.
And it's a great point. And I'm glad you did, because me and my partner, Mike, have just gotten into development, and we're working on a much smaller parcel. I think it's like 58 acres. But looking at it from a highest and best use perspective, there's so many different things you can do in terms of, for instance, with this particular project, it's probably going to end up being a single family or a townhouse development. We're working with the local government to figure out what they'll approve. So far, they're pretty amenable. But the other thing that is interesting, and you mentioned a couple of different unique assets, cell phone towers, I think is what you mentioned, is solar fields. So here in the Northeast, I don't know what the market is down by you guys, but here in the Northeast, there's a pretty significant push to utilize land that you can connect to tri-phase electrical infrastructure. And what I mean by that is wires on the main roads with transformers and whatnot. The ground leases for those deals are quite lucrative and going burn for our years. So, and I know cell towers is very similar.
Yeah, and we're not incorporating solar panels in our strategy right now, but we're not saying that's off the table. Really, the most productive use of our land right now is timberland because of how strong of a market that we're in. There are some encumbrances that come with those solar panel leases. I mean, Terry's been in this business long enough that he's seen these projects and they get sold over and over again to different investment companies. You maybe lose who owns that lease, and then those solar panels become obsolete. And then you have an EPA issue cleaning up those solar panels. There's risks with every activity that you do. For now, we're going to stick to our core method that has worked for Terry for 30 plus years and for me for the better part of the last 10 years. But we're keeping a close eye on those kind of peripheral strategies to maybe put some corners of our portfolio into those methods. It's a great point.
Yeah. And the point is that you guys are getting real creative with how you are leveraging the value opportunity within each of these properties. And it varies, I assume, from every property to property, right?
Right. And that's the differentiator of Southview versus some of these bigger TMOs or the publicly traded timber REITs is these guys are managing millions of acres, right? It's just very hard for them to monetize those properties the way that we can. So our niche is really focusing on the mid-sized properties, 500 acres to say 2,500 acres. And we're just able to be a lot more hands-on, create that outsized returns for this asset class. Whereas some of those bigger timber REIT, they're doing that 4 to 6% return. We're doing at least double that on most of the deals that we do.
Wow, nice. Yeah, it's mainly because it's too many cats to herd, right? It's when you're dealing in millions of acres or hundreds of thousands of acres, it's you've got to stick to your knitting and do one thing well, because if you try to do too many things, you're going to get buried. Being smaller allows it to be yeah, right on. That's awesome. In terms of how you acquire, you mentioned equity. Now, I believe you guys are raising a fund. You don't do syndications. Can you walk me through the thought process of how you approach that?
Yeah, I'll take the operating why we've chosen the fund route, and then Terry can talk about the acquisition process because he really runs timberland acquisitions and operations. But we're raising a fund right now. We're raising a $50 million fund to pursue this strategy. And the reason we've done that route, because we've done syndications, we've been doing friends and family deals for a long time, and those are great. That fund really allows us to have that cash on hand to just move a lot quicker, because that's the differentiator with us versus some of these other groups, is just being able to do that due diligence in a time we get to the closing table, because that makes a difference with the sellers too.
Right.
You can get more advantageous terms if you can get to that closing table a lot quicker. So having that cash on hand with the fund, it just makes a lot of sense for our type of strategy. But Terry, if you want to talk more about how we source deals and about our network in the region and so forth.
So being in the business for 35 years, I bought and sold some land, tracts of land as high as 3 times. So a lot of times people getting older, people going a different direction, or people simply just wanting to get out of that tract, maybe to buy or a small one, they'll call me and say, hey, I'm interested in selling this. Do you have anything else? That's one way, a method of locating property. And the second is knowing these groups, the other groups that you asked there. Sometimes I can reach in there because I got a personal relationship for most of them and cherry pick how around that fits into my network system. And then the third opportunity is a lot of time is just simply family estates coming to an end where, it's being divided up, and those families a lot of times say, hey, we've not been there and we don't want that fast asset no more. We can't agree on something. I bought several different property in that way. So there's always just the 35 years experience with knowledge of different managers that's managing other people's property that I got relationships with. So that brings a lot of attraction to the buying table.
And want to replicate if they were a first-time Timberland investor. And that's what we're providing at Southview, is we're eliminating that learning curve. If you can make the decision that, hey, I'm interested in investing in Timberland in a real asset, that's a great inflation hedge that's uncorrelated. You say, hey, I want to invest in the asset class. There's really, you have the publicly traded REITs, which you get the volatility with those and you don't get the same returns. Or you have to go work with the TIBO, where you have these Timberland investment management organizations. You typically need 50 million, 100 million. You need to be an institution to go work with them to have them build you a portfolio. And what we're offering with Southview is at a very reasonable minimum to get that boots on the ground, experienced operators in the asset class. There's no learning curve, right? This is not a concept that we're trying to prove, right? This is a method that has been perfected over decades, and we're going to get you involved in our network from day one and access to these unique deals that we find.
Okay, that's fantastic. And so tell me about the typical investor. Is this an investment that is for accredited investors, or how do you guys operate that way?
So our offering is a Regulation D 506C offering. Anybody who comes in our fund has to be an accredited investor. The minimum is $100,000 for the fund, but our investors that we work with registered investment advisors. We've been onboarded to the Charles Schwab alternative investments platform. You have to be invited to get onto that platform, and some RIAs who, like what we're doing and see it as an alternative for their practice and a differentiator asked us to get onboarded to that platform. We're getting a lot of traction in the RIA channel, and then also just high net worth accredited investors. We have a list of accredited investors who are just interested in a unique asset class, unique real estate asset class like Timberland, and they'd come into the fund. So really those two groups, we're beginning to speak with family offices. Family offices are a little bit of a different animal, right? Sometimes their structures are a little bit, you have to fall into their timing in order to get things done. So we keep in touch with a handful of them, and we'll probably see some family offices come into the fund at some point here soon. But they and accredited investors are really our best clients.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
A motivated seller just filled out your web form. If you call back within 5 minutes, you're nearly 4 times more likely to get that seller appointment. But delay your follow-up by even just 10 minutes? Forget it. You're toast. Ella Vista Connect calls that lead back in 60 seconds, qualifies them, and schedules your meeting. Find out how much slow follow-up is costing you. Free calculator at ellavista.com/underground.
Excellent. All right, guys. So we've been talking. I could talk for days about this stuff. I'm fascinated by your business model, and congratulations again on a great business that you've built. I'd like to get into our lightning round, the final five. Let's work it this way since we got two guys answering. You guys can decide who answers which question, and then we'll just go from there. So first question is, I really want to know about what gets you out of bed on Monday morning and goes to work, right? You're already successful. I imagine the college tuitions are paid and the mortgages are paid off and the cars are owned free and clear and everything. So it's not necessarily about money. What gets you out of bed and showing up to work on Monday morning?
I'll take this one, and Terry, you probably take this one too. For me, it's just really just succeeding and living to my highest potential. You look out at a graveyard, right, and it's filled with people and wasted potential. And my intention is not to be one of those people and just get the most out of the 100 years that I've been given. Yeah, that's really my purpose.
All right, Terry.
I love going out and meeting new people. And in this business, it allows me to meet a new person every time I venture out on a piece of real estate. And it always something good comes out of that. And it might not only be real estate. This is always about, hey, most of the time it's like these people are reaching out for help. So in some form of way, it's just, hey, giving back and helping others.
Love that. That's great. All right, guys. Obviously, as successful as you both are, you've had help along the way, without a doubt. Everybody has. And so I'm curious about your mentors and the advice they gave you. What's the best advice you've ever gotten and who gave it to you?
I'll take this one to start, but I'll say this about Terry. Terry was, before we went into business together, was a mentor to me, right? Teaching me about this asset class, right? Teaching me how to find deals, allowing me to come in, right, when I was still building in my career, to contribute what I could to a deal. And that was just very generous of him to allow me to do that. But he says something that sticks with me is, I think a lot of people, some people these days, they sit around feeling sorry for themselves, right? There's a lot of self-reflection of maybe they're feeling depressed. And the number one remedy for that is really just to go get busy, right? And Terry just says a lot more simple than I do, but he just said, go out and wash your car. And I think that's just really good advice, is if you're feeling sorry for yourself, right, just go out and get busy and just get started doing something. And I don't have a lot of time for self-reflection building this business right now, but that has been helpful to me at certain periods, just to keep busy and keep moving forward when things are a little bit difficult. So that's been helpful.
Terry?
I'd have to say it'd be my dad. My dad was always, actually I got two, as far as my dad laid core principles down my life. And one of them was always do what you say you do and mean what you do. And always have no excuses. And if you do have some defects or faults, hey, stand up and take face of them. Just learn from that, from your failures. As far as real estate, it would have to be John Dixon. John Dixon was a very mentor, friend of mine, great guy. He's in the Marietta area. He's in the auction business. And he took me under his wing probably in 1995, 96. Illustrating me different parts of the world and introducing me to things like 1031 or conservation easements. So pretty well having a guy like him, man, he was just a great mentor in the real estate business. But those two guys right there, and God-fearing people too. So that would be my two men.
Great. Yeah,
and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my folks too. I have two of the best parents in the world, and I see them as something to aspire to as well. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. I always you learn a lot from your mentors, but you also learn a lot from stubbing your toe. And so I'm curious about a professional mistake that you guys have made over the years, that you made a decision. You're like, boy, I'd like to have that one back. And what'd you do to recover?
Gary, why don't you kick this one off? Hold on a second.
Yeah, I told on that. So a lot of times you're talking and you're trying to trade on a piece of property, and you don't be as aggressive. Sometimes you think you need to be, and sometimes you don't. I think always the aggressiveness is the better part for me, because if there's something you see is key that works for you, there's one particular time kind of grows my foot on something, not so much pricing, but I didn't feel like I was putting pressure on the people about buying it. Well, I give it about a week after talking with them and come back and say, hey, we just entered in a contract 2 days ago. And I was like, and it was for less money than what I offered, but they, for whatever reason, they didn't take the deal serious because I wasn't pushing hard enough. And that's probably not always accurate, but I would say, hey, stick with it. You either get it, or they say, hey, we just don't want to sell it.
Dog on a bone.
Yeah. Yep. For me, it's really just early in my career is just spreading myself too thin on too many ideas and too many side projects. And that was kind of my side hustle could compete with a guy who is all in on the thing that I'm calling my side hustle, then that guy's going to beat you every time if he's all in. And I'm all in on Southview, right? This is the only thing that I'm working on and 100% focused on this. And you just look back at the most successful entrepreneurs in history, right? I mean, they really did one thing very well. There are exceptions, right? There are people who have multiple businesses, but more often than not, they typically do one thing really well, right? Rockefeller did oil, like Carnegie did steel, and I'd say Terry and I are working on Timberland. Yeah.
All right. You're the JP Morgan and Rockefeller of Timberland. I love it.
Hey, we'll take it. You said it.
Typically when you get to your level and how you get to your level is through continuous learning, right? And so I'm curious about how you consume information, whether that's through books or audiobooks or podcasts or whatever, and who you paying attention to these days? Who's helping you out?
Podcast is one. There's a couple podcasts I listen to. One's called Real Estate Underground with Ed Matthews. But yeah, also Founders podcast is a great one. They're typically less than an hour, just gives a great background on some of the most successful entrepreneurs in history, and not just current entrepreneurs. The lessons that are learned in history are still relevant today, and they do a great job with that one. But I'm also just paying attention to these days, this early innings that we're in alternative investments and private markets, because that's really where our strategy sits. And there are a couple of podcasts that are talking about how RIAs, family offices, accredited across the spectrum are looking for these alternative investments. And so that's a theme that I'm just paying attention to, because there's just a lot of tailwinds for strategies like ours to benefit from that. Yeah, that's something I'm paying attention to these days.
Excellent. How about you, Terry?
Pretty much I've stayed in the same pattern that I've been in because it's been working for me. But also along the way, I just noticed the young comers that come along that's got different ideas, especially with social media, how they project sales, and from timber to land sales to even just acquiring different methods also. And then most importantly, I listen to the elder, the head of me, sticking with, hey, you need to stick with the same roots. So I mix it up between the young and the old. I'm right in the middle of the road. So that's how I stay real close to as far as the mills, the demand for wood. We just had a big hurricane come through here. And hey, lumber prices are pretty good right now, but I'm sure the demand for lumber will be real big because and even in California with the fire, this Georgia Southern pine that we grow, the yellow leaf pine, is the strongest timber breed. They want in all the codes now, especially in Florida. So I just try to take on what's going on in the industry and go into different places with the forestry, the Georgia Forestry Association.
Yeah, right on. It's interesting. It was something that we should certainly talk about maybe on another show, is how the changing weather patterns are affecting your business, good or to the positive or as a negative. But we can talk about that another time because I'd love to have you back on the show. All right, so let's talk about success. How do you guys define success in your own lives?
You go ahead, Jared. Yeah, go ahead.
I've defined it as number one, you're successful, number one, with your community, your family, and your business, and just in the whole general area, trying to keep that whole thing balanced out all the way around, which is very difficult. Especially I've been so dedicated to this business for so long. Sometimes you may slip over here. I've got a son that he's coming back into the business. He's went out and been working for a major company now for 8 years. So easing him back into the business. So and I think being successful through your kids is raising them to do right and just appreciate what we do have in this country and what it's built for, what it's meant for. I think that's the true meaning of success for me.
And for me, success to me is freedom. And really that doesn't mean not working hard or playing golf every day, because that sounds really boring to me. It's really just having the foundation to say no to things. Early in my career, you have to say yes to everything, right? You go to every meeting, you meet with every client, every prospect, right? And I've just gained perspective through that. Not everyone or every opportunity is the right fit, and that's okay. It takes time to get to that point, right? You have to do those things for the first, whatever that time frame is, the first really decade plus of your career. But to reach that stage now where I can just be a lot more selective, and that's come with some success. So
yeah, learning to say no is a valuable skill.
Agreed.
As a mentor of mine used to say, that sometimes the deal you don't do is just as important as the deal you get. Hey, guys, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm curious about your non-real estate lives. So when you're not talking about real estate, what else do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, so many things for me. Really enjoy fishing, skeet shooting, acoustic guitar, playing some pool, staying in shape, doing some traveling, motorcycle trips. I'm really never bored. I got a lot of different things I'm interested in, but time with friends and family, there's drill down on any of those things, but stay pretty busy. I stay pretty busy with Southview. That's most of my time. But when I do have an hour here or there, I like to do one of those things.
Right on. How about you, Terry?
For me, it's muscle cars. It's the 60s and late 60s and early 70s muscle cars, the Chevelles and the Vets. I love to play with those, collect those.
Heavy guy. All
Play
right.
with those as well. So that's me pretty much, is the antique car.
Yeah, I'm a Ford guy myself. My uncle restored Shelby's, and my first car was a 65 Fastback Mustang. So
Cool.
yeah, and I regret every day that I sold that, but way
Cool.
in I was 18 and stupid. But so guys, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think like I said earlier, I think you've built a whopper of a business, and congratulations on that. If people want to learn more about you or Southview Timberland, what's the best way to get in touch?
Best way is to go to our website, and it's easy, southviewtimber.com, right? You can go there. There's a contact us form, and you can just submit through the contact us form to meet with somebody from our team. You can also just feel free to email me directly. It's just John, JOHN at southviewtimber.com. And we look forward to meeting with any of your listeners and educating them more about the asset class and seeing if there's a fit for us to work together.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, congratulations and continued good success. John Bernard and Terry Myers, thank you for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to have a conversation with you.
Thank you for having us.
This has been the Real Estate Underground. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps us grow. Until next time, Undergrounders, remember your real estate journey begins with a simple step forward. Now get to it. Bye for now.